Hello, this is Show-ei-mon. This time, I will try shortening the length of a t-shirt. The before and the after look like this. T-shirts are made using knitted fabric with a lot of stretch. When shortening the length of a t-shirt, finishing it with a cover stitch like the original is ideal for both appearance and stretch. But cover stitching requires a dedicated machine that I think many shops may not have. This time, I will use a regular straight stitch sewing machine and an overlock sewing machine, which most alteration shops should have. However, if you sew it as usual without thinking, the altered area will not stretch at all. So this time, before starting the work, let's test the stretch in two different ways. How can we keep the stretch while using a straight stitch? Here is the first test. Let's see how much the stretch changes by changing the overlock sewing machine settings. First, this one was overlocked with woolly yarn. To keep the stretch, I loosened the overlock thread tension as much as possible. But as woolly yarn spreads out its fibers, it fills the gaps between the stitches. These two are made with the number 80 Tailor polyester thread that I usually use. But I changed the needle thread tension for each one. This is the same thread tension as when sewing normal fabric, which is the setting I usually use. This one was overlocked with the needle thread tension loosened as much as possible without making the stitches go wrong. Let's try pulling each one. First, the one with the normal Tailor thread. The needle thread is very tight. When I pull it, it stops here. Next, the one with the loosened thread tension. It stretches much more than the previous one. Even when I pull it with quite a strength, there is no resistance. The thread does not become tight either. This shows that the thread tension only makes this much difference. Lastly, the woolly yarn. There is no resistance at all. There is this much difference already at the overlocking stage. I think woolly yarn would be the best option. But if you are sewing with regular thread instead, try to loosen the thread tension as much as possible. And now for the second test. In addition to the overlock sewing machine, let's look at the difference in stretch from adjusting the straight stitch sewing machine. First, the overlock is done with woolly thread. The bobbin thread is woolly yarn and the upper thread is number 50 Tailor. The thread tension is loose. Next, as before, the overlock and the bobbin thread for the main stitching are woolly yarn. But the upper thread tension for the woolly yarn and the main stitching is set a little tighter. The stitches of the top stitching stand out clearly. This time, both the upper and bobbin threads are number 50 Tailor, and the main stitching was sewn with loose thread tension. The overlock is also Tailor. Because the thread tension is loose, the stitches are not very neat. This one uses Tailor thread for both the main stitching and the overlock, with the thread tension set so the stitches look neat. At a glance, these stitches look the best. Let's pull each one. First, the neat-looking Tailor thread. It stretches more than I expected. There is resistance here. Let's pull it more. The sewing thread broke. The overlock thread also broke. It stretched more than I expected, but if it is pulled hard suddenly, the sewing thread will break. Next, the loose Tailor thread. I do not feel any resistance. The fabric stretch is probably hardly restricted. There seems to be no problem with the stretch at all. Because it was pulled, the stitches have become looser than before stretching. It does stretch, but it does not look very good. Next, the woolly yarn with normal tension. I feel a little resistance here. It restricts the fabric stretch a little, but I think it stretches enough for wearing it. Woolly yarn becomes thinner when pulled, and when loosened, the fibers spread and fill the gaps. So even if the thread tension is quite loose, the slackening in the thread is rarely noticeable. Lastly, let's pull the woolly yarn with loose tension. There is no thread resistance at all. The stitches are not loose either. Even compared with the woolly yarn at normal thread tension, this stretches more. As you can see, you can sew and maintain a certain amount of stretch just by changing the sewing thread and adjusting the machine thread tension. The one sewn with Tailor stretched more than expected in this test. But in the actual alteration, it often does not stretch at all. When shortening a t-shirt with an overlock stitch, focusing on how much stretch you can keep is essential. Now, based on the test, let's actually shorten the length of a t-shirt. This time, let's shorten the t-shirt length by 5 centimeters. It is currently sewn with cover stitching, but we will finish it with overlocking and a straight stitch sewing machine. First, measure the left and right side seams. If the left and right sides are uneven at this point, adjust the shortening amount so the finished length will be the same. Since it's hard to see the marks in the video, I will make marks with a water erasable pen. It is currently cover stitched, so there are 2 rows of stitching. But if we add 2 rows of stitching with a straight stitch machine, it will become harder to stretch. So this time, I will change it to 1 row of stitching instead. Ideally, it is best to finish it with the same appearance as the original. But you have to decide flexibly depending on whether you should prioritize the appearance or stretch for the item you're handling. The current stitch width is about 1.7 centimeters, so I will make the hem 2 centimeters. The main stitching should come between the center of the overlock stitch and the needle thread position. If the distance from the main stitch to the edge of the overlock stitch is too narrow, it may burst. If there is too much extra space, the fabric will curl up and will not look very nice. Mark the finished line on the back side as well. Now I will overlock it. I will overlock it with woolly yarn. If you sew quickly, the fabric will stretch, so run the overlock sewing machine slowly. Do not pull the fabric toward you. Rather, the image is to push it along with the speed of the machine. It should look like this. It stretches properly. Before the main stitching, press it with an iron. Even if you overlock slowly, it will stretch a little, so this is to fix that stretch. To make the main stitching sew neatly, fold it and press at the finished position. Take a 2 cm seam allowance and press it with an iron. If you can sew it cleanly without folding it, you can do the main stitching without ironing. It should look like this. Let's finish it with the main stitching. The bobbin thread is woolly yarn. The upper thread is number 50 Tailor. This time, I am sewing with a size 11 ballpoint needle. With a regular needle, there is a possibility of cutting the fabric fibers. So try to use a ballpoint needle as much as possible. The key point when sewing is to keep both the upper thread and bobbin thread tension as loose as possible. When winding woolly yarn onto the bobbin, do not pull the thread too much, and wind it loosely. Set the stitch length a little longer, taking shrinkage into account. Do a test sew on leftover fabric and adjust the stitches. Use a ballpoint needle that matches the thickness of the thread. If the needle hole and thread thickness do not match, the thread tension will become tight, and the stretch will be lost. Now I will sew it. The fabric is soft and unstable, so sewing while holding it with a strapping band helps you sew neatly. However, strapping bands also has the effect of preventing stretch. So before placing it, pull the fabric very slightly to stretch it a little. This way, you can sew while keeping the stretch. Stretch it only a little, just enough that you feel a slight pressure. The sewing is done. It is sewn neatly. It stretches well, too. However you sew it, the main stitching will stretch the fabric a little, so press it with an iron to return it to its original state. Press it without stretching it. It should look like this. Let's pull it. There is no resistance from the sewing thread at all. Even when stretched, the sewing thread does not sag. It is finished. As I said at the beginning, when sewing knitted fabric, the most suitable method is cover stitching. When considering the stretch, the method introduced today does not result in an ideal finish. But still, by making various adjustments, it is possible to keep a certain amount of stretch in this method. So this time, I explained how to shorten the length of a t-shirt. Thank you for watching until the end. Please give a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. This was Show-ei-mon.